Well, after a hard day over at Mr. Rick Priestley's playing Warlords of Erehwon, we have had a fun time playing Halflings versus Knolls. During the course of the game, the Knolls had a long way to go, but ultimately, I think it's safe to say, Rick, that after some rather splendid stumpy charges...
Some good stumpy charging and some good dice rolling, if I may say so.
Yes.
Some very good dice rolling, including some fantastic 3 or less saves on your part. We had to call it a day.
We called it a day because ultimately it was just...
It was not going the Knolls' way, was it?
No, but then at the same time, I think it was safe to say that the Halflings ran away and leaving Halfling Town.
I think that's because you rather bravely in the last minute, or perhaps a moment of over-enthusiasm, perhaps the pie shop had opened, I don't know, decided to charge my Knoll chieftain with your Halfling sheriff. And I have to say, the Halfling sheriff is not built for combat.
No.
He's not a combat monster.
But his donkey was up for it.
His
and
donkey
it's
was
a
up
little
for
bit
it.
like the Charger Light Brigade, where, you know, somebody passed wind somewhere and it just charged. And that was it, really. So what we've, after playing the game, what we're going to do now is go through and actually come up with a close-up look at how each part of the game works. Rick's going to take us through it. You'll probably hear my voice again, you poor people, talking about what we're doing. But after that, it'll be all about Mr. Priestley, which I know is the star of the show for me.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So we're using the standard sort of bolt action order dice, or Gates of Antares order dice.
Yes, the Erehwon game uses the same dice as we also use for both bolt action and for Gates of Antares, and they're available from Warlord Games. And each side has a colour. You have 1 dice for each unit in your force. Usually about 6 to 8 dice for a small game, and something up to about 12 dice for a medium-sized game. You put all the dice into the bag.
Suitably opaque container.
Opaque container. You draw a dice out at random. I can feel the colours. There you go. And allocate it to the player whose side it is, in this case yours.
Okay.
You choose one of your units.
So I'll choose archers.
Okay, and you give it one of these orders.
Right.
And if it's an archer unit, you might want to give it a fire order. A fire order is basically shoot without moving.
So what we've got is the different orders, if the people aren't sure, are fire, advance, which means you can move and shoot.
Yeah.
Ambush, which means sort of like you stand there and wait for the enemy to come towards you, then you do an initiative test to actually
It's almost
fire.
an Overwatch, really.
Yeah.
Obviously, because the dice have come from a World War II game,
Yeah.
it does say ambush,
Yeah.
which seems a little inappropriate in a fantasy game, doesn't it? People have commented. But I've simply used it as a sort of, I'll wait and I'll take my turn later. So it's really a deferred order.
Okay. And then we've got down, which is, what would you say that was?
Down is usually a failed order. If you fail to give an order to a unit, and in some circumstances units have to test to receive an order, then they, instead of doing what you want them to do, they go down. And at the end of the turn, down order dice don't automatically go back into the dice bag, so they might stay on the table for several turns. Right. Which means your unit can't then do anything because it's already got a dice allocated. Okay.
And during the course of the game, we used run, which is double move, but then there was an extra facility in the game as well.
Yeah, the movement is triggered off the dice like everything else. So if you give a run order to a unit, you can move up to it's 2 times its normal move.
Right.
Or 2m. A normal move is 5 inches for most things. They vary a little bit, as you might imagine. But a run order would typically therefore be 10 inches. So, but you can, if you want, sprint, which is move another m, so another 5 inches in this case. If you sprint, then you risk becoming exhausted and you take a test. Like all tests in the game, that's based on a d10. You have to roll under a value because that's the general mechanic. And your agility value is typically 5. So roll under 5, I fail, I've rolled a 9, which means I take a pin marker. A pin is it's like an exhaustion marker. Again, I've retained the word pin because that's what we've used in bolt action, and these are sold as pin markers. You can see they're Click them to whatever you want. Essentially they're an exhaustion marker or a disorder marker.
So if you're already playing bolt action, you're already, or Beyond the Gates Ventari, you're already there in terms of how the order system works.
Pretty much.
Right.
You've already got the dice.
Yeah. Yes.
If not, then you don't have to use the dice. You could put chits in.
Right.
To be fair, but then you'd have to also nominate which orders have been given, because sometimes it makes a difference. So, although you can get by, I would suggest buying the dice would be a good investment.
And the last one is Rally, which works as that way to stop running away.
It also, the main use of Rally is where you've got a lot of pins.
Yeah.
Let's say this unit of barbarians here has managed to acquire all these pins. So just using one pin as that's 4 pins. When you want to give this unit an order, let's say we want to give it a run order, you test against its command value, which is typically something like 7 or 8, let's say it's 8, but these are penalties, so you now need to score 8 minus 4 or less to give these guys a run order. Succeeded, rolled a 2. Because I've succeeded, you take a pin off and then you make your action. But I'm still carrying 3 pins, which is a huge disadvantage in the game, particularly when it comes to combat. So a better option might be to give them a rally order instead. When I give them a rally order, you don't take account of the pins. So a rally order will be against their value, the basic command value, which is 8. So 8 or less on that favourite. Yes, 2, so successful. So you take a pin off because you've been successful. You also take a d6, roll it, and remove that many pins because you made a rally order. So now that unit's fresh again.
And that's the best bit of rally rolling that happened outside the game.
Yes, in fact, the only decent bit of rolling, isn't it? Yeah.
One, right,
if only I could have done that when we actually played. But that's how the rally orders work.
Yeah.
When you give when a commander gives a rally order, it affects not only his unit, but also any units which are en route.
Right.
And route can happen. Usually, route happens when you failed a break test, and you haven't lost half of the. You either route when you break, you either are destroyed or you're routed. And if you're routed, you just get lots of pins and you stop running away.
So now we've sussed out the order dice. It's only fair then, I guess, to start looking at how do you shoot people. So you've got your fire order or your advance order, which is move and fire. But what we then need is something to shoot with, Mr. Priestley.
Something to shoot with, like, for example, these bowmen here.
Here's men we prepared earlier.
Or bow Knolls. Okay, well, they get 1 shot each. You have you need to give them an appropriate order. A fire order is basically stand and shoot with maximum accuracy. A advance order is move and shoot. And in both cases, it's slightly complicated.
Can I just ask, the little arrow at the top, I know that's probably from bolt action or whatever, but does that matter in terms of you're designating who you're firing at?
No.
No, so it's just the order that matters.
The reason why we put that on was so you can use the dice as a direction randomizer.
Okay.
If you want, you just roll the dice and the pointer will point you in a direction.
Okay.
I don't think we've used it as that very often.
No.
But if you want, that's hint. That's a useful tip, guys. That's why we put the thing on.
Right. So if you've got a fire or an advance, which is move and fire, then what happens next?
Okay, so you're 1 shot each. They've got a accuracy value of, I think, basic 4 for these guys, which is quite low. 5 is average, so 4 is a bit poor. But you get a +1 because you've given them a fire order, so they need 5s. They're all the same, so you might as well roll all the dice together. Anything higher than a 5 is a fail. A 0 is always a fail regardless, and you can never re-roll them. Sometimes you're allowed to re-roll if you have a special rule. So that's a fail. So in this case, 2 hits. These guys have got 2 hits on them, so the first thing you do is allocate them. And you can allocate them to any of these figures, but you have to go evenly. So let's go 1 on him and 1 on him. Let's imagine that he's the leader. So I've allocated 1 to the leader. And then you roll basically the saves. It's called a resist roll, but it's basically a saving throw. And for these guys, it would be I think it's 6. So 6 or less, fail, is dead. And the leader, 6 or less, pass, so he's okay. Had the leader failed, let's imagine, had the leader failed, had the leader failed on anything other than a 10, he could re-roll because he's got the tough special rule.
Right.
You can never re-roll a 0 or 10.
Okay.
Then that's how shooting works. Once you've taken casualties off, because a unit's been shot at, you give it a pin. So,
and is it a pin marker per casualty?
No,
or is it just one? Right,
always
okay.
one. And you take it whether you hit. When you hit, you don't take it because you've taken casualties. You take it because you've been hit.
Right.
So sometimes the shooting is you shoot at things to put pins on them, rather than to cause casualties as a nice bonus to get the odd casualty, but often worth it just to get a pin. And if you can get 2 or 3 pins on a unit by shooting at it from 2 or 3 different sources, then so much the better. When you come to give orders to a unit, let's say we'd managed to get a couple of pins on this unit. Normally, if you give an order to a unit and it's got no pins, it just does the thing you want. If it's got 2 pins, then you deduct 2 from its command value and you have to roll under that value. So its command value is 8. 2 pins, I've got to roll under 6, fail. To do the order, I've failed, which means I still take a pin off, but instead of doing the thing I wanted to do, I go down.
So if you'd passed that order test, you would have been able to then do whatever you planned to do, give it the correct order. So maybe an advance, maybe a charge, or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the pins actually do tend to stop you, and at the end of the turn, once you've got no dice left in the dice bag, you gather up all the orders, and put them back for the next turn. But any down orders have to be recovered, and a recovery test is against your command value. In this case, 8, -1 for the pin, so it's 7. I succeeded, so I go back in. If I'd failed, then that would have stayed down until the next turn.
Right. Okay. Good. What we've done now, we've fired.
Yep.
Those barbarians now deserve to have a chance to fight back. So what we'd like to know is how are they going to charge? What order do I need to give them? Okay.
Well, you need to give them a run. Well, you don't need to give an advance order. No, you normally give them a run.
Yeah.
A run is.
But you don't have to. You could give them advance if they're in distance.
It wouldn't matter. You give them a run anyway, because you give them a run for a charge. Okay. So they're within 10 inches of these knolls, so there's no need for them to sprint, which is an extra 5 inches. So I need to give them an order, pin. Value's 8, so -1 is 7. 7 or less, I failed. Let's imagine I'm better at dice roll. Oh dear.
You can always just turn it.
Hey, look.
Hey, that's amazing, Mr. Priestley.
So we've succeeded, barely.
Yeah.
Because we've succeeded, we take a pin, we charge, so we move into contact with these ear knolls.
Now, in terms of charge distance, is it the whole unit has to be in the charge distance, or can it be
closest model?
The closest model, right?
That's true for shooting as well. You always go closest to closest.
So although you're working in units of 5 originally, as long as the closest is to the closest, that's what matters.
Yep.
Okay.
So we've charged with a great big run order.
Okay.
The first thing you do when you charge into combat is you have an exchange of missiles. These guys are only armed with 2-handed weapons, so they don't have anything to throw.
Right.
When we played our game, almost all of our troops had nothing to throw, apart from the guys who actually had bows. Bowmen can't actually throw as they go in, but if they're being charged, like these guys are, these get to shoot at me. So
it's kind of like a stand and shoot.
Yeah, it's a stand and shoot reaction. So you get 5 knolls shooting. Their basic accuracy is quite low. They're 4s. Mildly panicked because they've been charged, so -1. So 3's needed to hit.
There's super 1.
Miss, and a 1. That's 1 hit. So these guys would have to take again. They save their.
And 1's always a success, isn't it?
1's always a success. A 0's always a fail.
Right. Okay.
Regardless of what number it is or value. So they would take their basic save, which 5 just do it.
Okay.
Yes. So
now we're where the metal meets the meat, as it were.
But they have been hit by missiles.
Right. Good. Okay. So now you've saved that hasty fire. Now it's time to hack people to pieces.
Yeah, okay, and there's only 4 of them left, so there's 4 guys, 4 dice. Their basic strike value is called the strength. The strength is 5, but they're making a charge, so 6. So basically,
they get +1 for charging. Right,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So basically, they need a 6s to hit.
So it's only 1 fail. That's not bad.
So it's 3. And again, you allocate them to the Knolls.
Right.
Now it can make a difference because leaders often have the tough rule, which means you can re-roll a fail. But let's imagine these aren't. Their resist is very high, and Knolls usually 7. Double-handed weapons goes down to 5s.
Right. So it takes 2 off. Right.
So.
Whoa, that's a good roll.
That's better than your dice roll.
I know, it
Actually,
is.
no, it's not comparable, I would say.
Well, I'm a halfling specialist.
So they've miraculously survived.
Yep.
And then in return, and the fighting is simultaneous, so even if 3 had been killed, all five still get to fight back. Knolls are quite fighty, so there'd be 5s going back. Ooh, fail. That's more like my dice roll, isn't it?
Better.
1 hit, and these guys usually they'd have a value of
5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
I'm assuming these got swords as well, so they are a -1. So let's say it's 5. Fail.
Somebody's gone down.
Even had I allocated that to the leader, who normally has a reroll, because it's a 10, you can't reroll it.
Yeah.
So that's not good.
Good.
It's you then work out who's won the combat, and actually who's won isn't dependent upon necessarily the casualties, it's dependent upon the pins. Yeah.
That's all well and good, but this is a fantasy game, Rick. Magic. Tell us all about it.
Magic, aye. Right, well, we have a suitable wizard here. This, here we are.
Yeah.
Wizard.
Perhaps we should have a...
You have a shaman?
There's the shaman there.
Okay.
And we've also got, perhaps if we'd like to have a unit of chaps that deserve to die. Or
Yeah, target.
Yeah.
Magic isn't really a huge part of the game, although if you want, you can tool up the wizards. Generally speaking, we don't. We tend to fight fairly small skirmish level games, which is what the game is designed for, with what we call level 1 wizards. And the level 1 wizards are fairly... how many spells did we get off in that game? 2 or 3?
Yeah, 2 or 3, yeah. And we use the same one consistently.
Yeah, we weren't terribly ambitious with magic. But
I think what I noticed about the magic is, it's one of the aspects that I really liked, unlike certain games, it's not a total game changer. It's just another way to enhance what's going on. So, for example, the fireball spell, which we used quite a lot, is akin to firing a unit with a heavy weapon. I mean, in a sense, isn't it? Like a bolt thrower or something like that.
But it's an artillery spell, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an artillery spell. And then I had Endowed Strength, which I never got the chance to use, but it would have meant that a unit near me could have been better in close combat or stronger in close combat for 1 round.
Yeah.
So you're not actually calling down the gods, you're instead having an effect on what's around you.
Yeah. There's a couple of spells which can be quite dangerous if you're a high level wizard, because they step up and the effect can potentially be enough to take a unit out.
Right. Okay. Now let's put our targets back on Souls we play.
Yeah.
And
here we go. Look, here we go. We're
range in and open
range
fire.
in. Here's our wizard. Here's another wizard. Let's imagine these chaps is going to cast a fight. The ubiquitous fireball spell. Oh yeah, is it?
Oh yeah.
Mom is going to cast a fireball. Fire's got a range of 20 inches, easily enough. The way you cast magic is you give this your wizard wizardess an order.
And does that have to be a fire order or?
No, it can be any order.
Any order at all? Right.
I don't think it can be down. I think if you give her down, it doesn't
Right.
get. But if otherwise, let's say you've given her a run order.
Right.
You make the move, run, and then once the move's complete, you can cast a spell.
So your wizard can run into action or almost double move into action and then cast a spell.
You can. It's not always a good idea to.
No,
but, you certainly can.
Yeah.
You cast a spell. by making a roll against the spell's casting number. Most spells have a very, they're quite generous. I think the fireball's 9.
Yes, it is.
Which is really an automatic cast. You can't really go wrong unless you roll a 10. They go down to about 6, but they're not difficult. They're not intended to be difficult to cast. So let's say I'm going to fire. We decide to fire a fireball at this unit. Roll a 5, so it's a pass. So it's 9 or less would have been a pass. The only thing that would have failed would have been a 10. Well, a 10 always fails anyway. So we now cause D3.
But there's an opportunity.
Oh, you want to dispel it?
Yes, now.
Okay.
So one of the things I've learnt today is if you've both got a wizard, that's a good thing. Tell us why that is a good thing.
Well,
Rick.
wizards can always dispel spells.
Right.
And the way the dispel system works is quite it's quite easy. If you declare you want to dispel, not a problem. I've rolled a 5. Although I needed a 9, I rolled a 5. If you can roll under a 5, which I'll roll on your behalf, then that's automatically dispelled 6. So failed. That's failed to dispel.
But if it had been under...
If you rolled a 5, it would be under, so 3.
Right.
If you rolled a 3, for example, for whatever, then that would have just been dispelled end of the day, and that would be it.
So is it automatically
Yeah.
another magic user gives you a dispel opportunity?
Yeah, and unless you're going to go around rolling 1s,
Yeah.
because you can't roll under a 1,
You can't roll.
you're always vulnerable to being dispelled. But the thing about the spells that have got a very high casting value, like those, like the fireball, yes, you can cast it on a 9, but the chances of you actually getting it through. It tends to mean you get a spell off about half the time you want in practice.
Okay.
Our game was quite unusual in that neither of us actually rolled a blunder.
No.
I'm famous for rolling blunders when I roll spells. Blunder is a 10.
Yeah.
And if you roll a 10, you just go onto a miscast shot.
Yeah.
Which has surprising and sometimes unpleasant consequences.
We'll show you some of those we'll put it on the video.
But in this case, I've managed to succeed. Hooray! As I say, D3 plus that spell gives you D3 plus 1 hits on the Knolls. I'll roll a D6 and halve it, so that's 2 plus 1 is 3. So 3 hits, and you just distribute those the same way as we did with the shooting. So it's up to you, the guy who's been hit to distribute them. But let's say like that. I think their strike value 1. That means you deduct 1 from your resist value or your save. So your normal save is 7, goes down to 6. Doesn't really matter.
Save 2, lost 1.
Save, dead. So 1's dead. Let's say it's that one. You've been fired upon by a missile, so you get a pin, and you've been fired upon by a fire, so flaming missile, you get another pin. So it's a useful way of hitting things with an extra pin.
But again, just to reiterate, it's not the be-all and end-all. You need a combined arms unit of shooters, magicians, hitters, whatever you want to call them, before you can actually stand a chance of winning, which, again, in my book, is another tick for it.
Yeah.
Right, so let's just talk about what actually makes up a warband. You mentioned earlier how many figures are in each unit. So you start off with 5 figures in each unit?
Most infantry units are in 5s or more, so 5 to 10 usually.
And they're all individually based?
They're all individually based. Doesn't really matter whether the bases are square, round or whatever.
Right.
Got a round one there, haven't we? But they have to be individually based and they stay within an inch. So, no figure separated by more than an inch. So here, that's a typical kind of small unit, 5 figures. Cavalry tend to be in 3s.
Right, which unfortunately we don't have.
Which you don't have, but your things like your wizard is normally a single figure plus a couple of bodyguards or a couple of spirits or familiars, or something like that.
And they take part in the fighting. They are literally protecting, right?
Yeah, they're protecting, and they can. You can also sacrifice the spirits to.
And what about leader models? Do they have a little entourage?
Yep, same again. Your leader would typically it would always be mounted. If it's a mounted leader, you'd have a mounted entourage.
Right.
But you normally have a couple of figures.
Right. Okay.
The reason for that is because that's a carryover really from the Antares game and the Bolt Action, where a command squad is a commander,
unit,
an HQ unit.
Yeah.
And I retained it because it actually gives you that little bit of extra protection. Because when you hit, you have to allocate the hits evenly. But let's say you had let's say our wizard here had a couple of
Barbarian
find any a couple of barbarian minders. If this unit has been attacked and got 3 hits, you have no choice. It's going to be 1 hit on each. If 2, you've got the choice. You could simply go, well, the minders will take it, and then you know that she'll be safe.
So you could also be quite mercenary and decide to use your extra bodyguards as what they should be, which is they die first.
Yeah, they get in the way of the damage.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rick.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
This video has been produced by WI Prime. WI Prime is Wargames Illustrated Magazine's online members club. As a WI Prime member, you get access to all Wargames Illustrated videos before anyone else. We'll keep you posted on what's new via the Primetime News Bulletin delivered to your inbox every Friday. If you're not a WI Prime member, you're missing out on loads of benefits, including access to the Wargames Illustrated Vault, freebies, discount vouchers, PDFs of the latest magazine, and more. Find out more about WI Prime by following the link.